President Biden speaking to Vladimir Putin today, their second talk in a month in an effort to de-escalate tensions over Ukraine. Meantime, the USS Truman carrier strike group is staying put in the Mediterranean, as one defense official put it, to reassure our allies and partners. The Truman Carrier Strike Group has been ordered to stay in the European Command Area instead of moving to Central Command, which includes Northeast Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia. This is video of training exercises by the crew of the Truman in the Mediterranean on a previous deployment. Secretary of Defense Austin's order did not specifically mention Russia or Ukraine, but it comes after weeks of tension in Eastern Europe as Moscow masses tens of thousands of troops and heavy equipment near the Ukrainian border, raising fears of military action similar to the 2014 annexation of Crimea. Ukrainian officials estimate over 100,000 Russian troops. The actual number is unconfirmed. This is video of snipers and motor rifle brigades of Russia's southern military holding exercises in the Rostov region close to the Ukrainian border. Earlier this month, Putin demanded the U.S. and its allies ensure Ukraine not be permitted to join NATO. Russia is also demanding the U.S. not send troops or missile systems into Ukraine. Earlier this month, President Biden spoke to Putin in a 2-hour video call. He told reporters the call was very straightforward with no minced words.
If in fact he invades Ukraine, there will be severe consequences. Severe consequences. Economic consequences like none he's ever seen or ever have been seen.
When asked, Biden said those consequences would not include unilateral U.S. military action. His words, that is not on the table. Russia has repeatedly claimed it does not intend to invade Ukraine, despite a continuous buildup of forces along the border. Now back to you.
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate your reporting there. Well, let's welcome in New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, who is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congresswoman, welcome to the show. Good to see you. I'd like you to listen to what former U.S. Ambassador and acting DNI under Trump, Rick Grenell, told Newsmax earlier ahead of this Biden-Putin call. Listen.
I think we've got to be very careful putting Joe Biden in a situation where he negotiates with a very tough partner on the other side, because he's going to lose. He's already demonstrated that his Achilles heel, his desire is to be really liked by the Europeans and have this consensus with the UN.
Congressman, do you think this is the most effective strategy here to stop Putin's aggression, along with the NATO and UN crowd?
Yes, thanks for having me on, Lindsay. I think that Ambassador Grenell is exactly right. I think, Joe Biden is a career politician, a guy who's worried about currying favor and making friends, not about caring for the priority of the American citizens in our country. And it's just clear after what happened in Afghanistan that he really doesn't have a forceful approach. However, the Secretary of Defense is out there making sure that we keep some forces and some sea ships in the sea out there. We did give $60 million in lethal aid, and also we need to continue to bolster the intelligence that we have on the ground to be sure that this isn't going to happen, and that a country with an authoritarian like Putin isn't going to go in and try to seize Ukraine, which is, has its own right to its own sovereignty and its own sovereign borders. So I'm hopeful that that the Secretary of Defense and other diplomats, including Secretary Blinken, will back up a strong, forceful presence against Putin's intent to invade.
A lot of people have been critical, obviously, of President Biden, as you mentioned, of his non-strong approach to kind of try to just talk through things instead of what we saw from President Trump and how he handled these adversaries. The president is in vacation right now in Delaware, taking the call from there. Some people have said this is totally wrong. He should be back at the White House, a place of power, somebody who would respond well to that, Putin. Do you think this is bad? Should he be headed back to the White House right now?
Well, I think it looks better to be back at the White House to project the strength that we need to project with our enemies and adversaries around the world. I think it's a little unusual that he spends so much time in Delaware where he's not really engaging. And I think engaging from there makes him protected from the media and protected from his, the people that are going to be there, putting some pressure on him to stay strong, with the press corps. So I don't like the look, but it is the way President Biden, he campaigned from a basement, and now he's campaigning from a beach home in Delaware, which are presiding as the commander-in-chief from there. Unfortunately, this is what we have to deal with, but let's just hope the policies come out right in the end. Ukraine's protected. We prevent Putin from moving in and seizing Ukraine, as he's threatening to do. But we also have to be mindful of so many other things happening around the rest of the world, which concerns me again about President Biden's ability to handle these complex issues and just the lack of strength that has been shown on just about every foreign policy issue.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.